desires, when seen through a spiritual lens, are not mere whims or impulses, but invitations to engage with a deeper, more transcendent reality. They call us to step into something greater than our own limited understanding. Rather than coming from a place of desperation or need, these desires emerge as quiet whispers, subtly urging us to explore and discover new aspects of ourselves and the world around us. They are not demands or forces that drive us into action, but rather invitations to participate in the unfolding of life. When our desires are aligned with the divine will, they are like seeds planted within us, seeds that will grow at their own pace and in their own time. There is no rush, no sense of urgency. These desires do not pressure us to act in haste or to push for something that is not meant to be. Instead, they present us with options, opportunities, and paths to walk down, leaving the choice to us, free from the weight of obligation. In this way, desires that come from a higher source are not self-serving or ego-driven. They are neutral in their intent, encouraging us to move in harmony with the flow of life, to attune ourselves to a rhythm that is not our own, but part of a greater cosmic pattern. They do not force us into specific roles or outcomes, but instead gently invite us to participate in a dance that is already taking place, where each step feels natural and right, even if we cannot fully see the whole picture. Surrender and flow are intrinsic qualities of desires that come from a divine source. When desires are aligned with a higher will, they do not come with a sense of force or control. There is no need to manipulate situations or outcomes. Instead, they invite us into a state of surrender, where we release our grip on the need to shape everything according to our limited understanding. This surrender is not about giving up, but about yielding to a greater flow, a current of life that is far beyond our individual effort. In this state of surrender, we become more like vessels, allowing life to move through us. We stop struggling against the natural course of events, and instead we trust that things are unfolding as they should. The flow becomes a guiding force that leads us effortlessly from one moment to the next without resistance. It's not a passive resignation, but an active acceptance of what is. We align ourselves with the rhythm of the universe, finding that the more we let go, the more we are guided toward what is meant for us. Desires born of surrender do not demand or rush, they trust the process, knowing that things will come to fruition in their own time. There is a lightness in the approach, a sense of peace that comes from not having to force an outcome. This flow is not chaotic, but rather a harmonious movement that feels right, as though the universe itself is dancing with us. The more we surrender to this flow, the more it becomes clear that we are not in control, yet in this relinquishment we are exactly where we need to be. Selflessness, when it emerges in our desires, is a clear sign that we are aligned with something greater than our ego. Desires rooted in selflessness do not seek to fulfill our own immediate needs or validate our identity. Instead, they are driven by a deeper sense of compassion and care for others, pushing us beyond the confines of our individual desires and into a space where we genuinely wish for the well-being and growth of those around us. This selflessness doesn't come with expectation or demand. It is an unconditional giving, where the fulfillment of another person's happiness is as important, if not more important, than our own. When our desires are self-centered, they often arise from a place of lack or desire to prove something to ourselves or others. These desires are born of a hunger for validation, recognition, or control. They look outward, trying to draw in what they think they need to feel complete. However, desires rooted in selflessness are not driven by such needs. They are more expansive, reaching beyond the self and instead seeking the happiness and growth of others. In this way, they serve a greater purpose than simply filling an internal void. They are part of a larger tapestry, contributing to a collective well-being. Selflessness in desires allows us to act without attachment to the outcome. We seek the good of others without demanding anything in return. There is no sense of ownership, no possessiveness, no calculation of what we stand to gain. These desires are free from the chains of ego because they are not focused on our own image or gratification. Instead, they are an expression of love, care, and devotion, an act of service that flows naturally from the heart rather than the mind. When desires come from a divine source, they bring with them a profound sense of peace, even in the midst of external chaos. In moments of turbulence, when the world seems uncertain or overwhelming, the desires that are aligned with a higher will remain steady, rooted in an inner tranquility. There is no internal conflict, no agitation or anxiety about the outcome. Instead, there is a calm assurance in knowing that despite the swirling storms around us, everything is unfolding as it should. This peace is not the absence of challenges or difficulties, but the presence of a deep, unshakable understanding that all things are connected. The chaos of the external world no longer holds the power to disturb our inner equilibrium. Desires driven by ego, on the other hand, are often accompanied by anxiety, worry, and a fear of losing control. These desires are tied to an expectation of how things should be and a desperate need to shape circumstances to our own preferences. When they are unfulfilled or threatened, we feel dissonance and unrest. Desires that are born from a higher source, however, are grounded in a sense of acceptance and trust. Even when faced with uncertainty, there is an understanding that the outcome is not entirely in our hands, and this release from control brings peace. We are able to maintain clarity amidst confusion, knowing that there is a larger plan at work that transcends our immediate circumstances. In this way, peace becomes a constant companion, allowing us to navigate life's turbulence with grace and resilience, free from the turmoil that usually accompanies our grasping or clinging. Desires that are in alignment with higher values are not simply personal preferences or fleeting wants, but reflect a deeper connection to our core principles and ethical compass. These desires resonate with our true self, the part of us that is in harmony with what is good, just, and true. When we feel called towards something or someone, and that desire is aligned with higher values, it encourages us to act with integrity, compassion, and a sense of responsibility toward others and the world around us. Such desires are not shaped by external influences or societal pressures, but are rooted in a profound understanding of what is meaningful and important in the grander scheme of life. They encourage us to rise above selfish ambitions or superficial pursuits and direct our energies toward actions that are life-affirming and constructive. For example, a desire to care for another person, to uplift someone who is struggling, or to contribute to a cause that supports the common good. All these desires spring from a place of higher alignment, where personal gain is secondary to the well-being of others. When our desires reflect this alignment, we do not find ourselves torn between what we want and what we know is right. There is a seamless connection between our internal compass and our external actions. The desires that arise from within us are naturally in sync with the values we hold dear, whether they be love, justice, kindness, or truth. In this alignment, we are guided by something beyond the limited scope of our own desires, connecting to a larger, universal sense of purpose that transcends individual concerns. These desires lead us to live lives of authenticity, where our actions and intentions are in constant harmony with our higher ideals. Desires that come from a divine source unfold with time, like the gradual blossoming of a flower. They are not driven by a need for immediate results or the pressure of quick achievement. Instead, they emerge at their own pace. A sense of connection in our desires is a profound recognition that we are not isolated beings, but part of an intricate web of existence. When our desires are aligned with a divine source, they foster a deep sense of unity, not only with others, but with the entire universe. These desires do not arise from a place of separation or isolation, but from an awareness that we are all interconnected. There is a knowing that our actions, choices, and intentions ripple out, affecting others in ways we may not always see, yet trust to be true. This connection transcends individual gain or personal fulfillment. Instead of seeking to possess or control another person, divine desires inspire a mutual growth, a shared journey. We find that when we are in tune with a higher purpose, the desires we hold for others and ourselves are infused with respect, empathy, and a desire to see the other flourish. The energy behind these desires fosters collaboration rather than competition, love rather than attachment. There is a recognition that what is good for one is good for all, and in that understanding our desires move from a personal craving to a collective offering. When we feel a true sense of connection through our desires, we are able to see others as reflections of ourselves, not as objects to be acted upon. There is no need for manipulation or possessiveness, for we know that the well-being of the other is as important as our own. Our desires lead us to act in ways that encourage the growth, happiness, and freedom of others, because we understand that their fulfillment contributes to our own. This connection creates a space where both parties are free to grow and evolve together, and the bond is not based on dependency, but on a shared recognition of our inherent unity. The energy of compassion that infuses our desires is a soft yet powerful force, rooted in the deep understanding that all beings, including ourselves, experience suffering and joy. Compassionate desires are not self-centered or focused solely on our own comfort, but rather seek the well-being of others. This energy arises from an awareness of the interconnectedness of life, a gentle recognition that the pain and joy of one are felt by all. When our desires are shaped by compassion, they inspire us to act with kindness, patience, and understanding, extending ourselves toward others in their moments of need. Compassionate desires are characterized by their depth and empathy. They move beyond surface-level wishes or fleeting attractions, and instead reflect a genuine care for the emotional and spiritual growth of others. These desires encourage us to lift others up, to support them in their struggles, and to help them flourish in ways that honor their own journeys. The energy behind these desires is not demanding or possessive, but nurturing and sustaining. It is a force that moves us to act not from a place of obligation or guilt, but from an authentic desire to see others thrive. This energy of compassion often brings with it a quiet strength, for it is not weak or passive, but resilient and enduring. Compassionate desires have the power to heal and transform, not just the individuals we care for, but also ourselves. As we offer compassion, we find that it is returned to us in ways both subtle and profound. The energy that flows from compassionate desires encourages us to act selflessly, to give without expecting, and to love without conditions. This pure, unselfish energy creates a space where both giver and receiver are uplifted, bound together in mutual respect and care. Non-attachment in the context of desires reflects a state of freedom from the need to control or possess outcomes. When desires are not rooted in attachment, there is a sense of fluidity and openness, where we can hold something in our hearts without clinging to it. This state of non-attachment does not mean indifference or a lack of care. Rather, it is a deeper understanding that things and people are not ours to control, and that true peace comes from releasing the need for things to unfold according to our personal preferences. When our desires are free from attachment, we are no longer bound by the fear of loss. or the anxiety of unfulfilled expectations. We can deeply desire something, even with passion, but remain at peace with the idea that the outcome may be different from what we envisioned. This release from attachment allows us to engage fully in the process of life without the weight of expectation, knowing that whatever happens is part of a larger, unfolding plan that is beyond our limited understanding. Non-attachment also allows us to approach relationships, experiences, and material things without possessiveness or the urge to control. We can love and care for others without trying to mold them into our ideal image, and we can appreciate the beauty of the present moment without grasping at it or trying to keep it. This sense of non-attachment encourages us to live more fully in the here and now, allowing things to come and go without resistance and trusting that everything is in a constant state of flux, impermanent and ever-changing. At its core, non-attachment is about embracing the flow of life with an open heart, free from the constraints of expectation or desire for control. It teaches us to hold our desires lightly, recognizing that they are not fixed and that the true value lies not in the fulfillment of specific outcomes, but in the wisdom and growth we gain along the way. Silent assurance is the quiet confidence that arises when we align ourselves with a higher source of guidance. It is not the loud, forceful certainty that comes from ego or external validation, but rather a deep inner knowing that does not need to be spoken or justified. This kind of assurance is calm and steadfast, like the steady beat of a heart or the quiet rhythm of the earth. It is an unshakable sense that despite the uncertainties of life, we are exactly where we need to be, and that the desires we hold are not random but part of a larger, divine plan. Unlike the restlessness of a desire born from the self, which often needs constant reassurance or external confirmation, silent assurance comes from a place of inner peace. It does not seek validation from others or require the approval of circumstances. Instead, it is a trust that is felt deeply within, an intuitive recognition that what is meant for us will come in its own time, without force or struggle. There is no anxiety about the future, no fear of failure, because this assurance comes from the knowledge that we are not alone in the journey. This silent confidence allows us to move forward without hesitation, even when the path is unclear or the outcome uncertain. It is a quiet strength that underlies our actions, providing the courage to take the next step, even if we cannot see the whole road ahead. Silent assurance is not born from external circumstances, but from a deep inner alignment with a greater truth. It is the peaceful knowing that we are supported and guided, even in the midst of doubt or fear. This inner assurance does not shout, it simply is a calm, unwavering presence that leads us forward with trust and clarity. The courage to let go is not an act of weakness or resignation, but a profound act of trust and freedom. It is the willingness to release attachment to something or someone when we know, deep down, that holding on may no longer serve our higher purpose. This courage arises from the understanding that true growth often requires us to let go of what is familiar, comfortable, or even dear to us. Letting go does not imply that we no longer care, but that we trust the process of life and are willing to surrender control to something greater than ourselves. The act of letting go is rooted in the deep awareness that we cannot force or manipulate outcomes. When desires come from a divine source, they are not bound by our expectations, and the courage to release them comes from the realization that our true fulfillment does not depend on the outcome, but on the journey itself. Letting go allows us to stop clinging to rigid ideas of how things should be and to accept the flow of life as it unfolds. This surrender is not born from fear or defeat, but from the strength of knowing that whatever is meant for us will come in its own time, and that the act of holding on too tightly may block the very thing we seek. An eternal perspective is a way of seeing the world that transcends the fleeting concerns of the moment and connects us to something much larger, timeless, and enduring. When our desires are viewed through the lens of eternity, they are no longer bound by the immediate pressures of daily life or the limited scope of our personal wants. Instead, we begin to perceive them as part of a much grander narrative, one that stretches far beyond our individual experiences and connects us to the greater unfolding of life itself. This perspective helps us to step back from the immediate urgency we often feel in pursuit of our desires. Instead of focusing solely on short-term goals, we start to see the long-term implications of our actions and desires. We come to understand that our lives are not isolated events, but part of a larger interconnected flow. The decisions we make, the desires we act upon, and the relationships we cultivate are all threads in a vast tapestry, one whose full design may not be visible to us in the present, but whose significance we begin to sense over time. When we adopt an eternal perspective, we realize that many of our desires, whether material, relational, or personal, are transient. The things we chase in the immediate moment may seem essential, but they are often temporary, subject to change, decay, and impermanence. This understanding frees us from the grip of attachment, allowing us to live with a sense of detachment from outcomes, knowing that our true fulfillment lies not in the transient things of this world, but in the deeper connection to our higher self and purpose. Desires seen through this eternal lens shift from the accumulation of things to the cultivation of virtues, relationships, and experiences that are aligned with the larger, more enduring principles of love, wisdom, and growth. Instead of desiring immediate gratification or the validation of others, we begin to long for a deeper, more spiritual alignment with our true nature. We begin to see our lives as part of an ongoing journey, one that stretches across time, and our desires become more focused on what will serve the soul and contribute to the greater good. An eternal perspective also provides us with the patience to endure trials and setbacks. When we see beyond the immediate moment, we understand that challenges and obstacles are not final destinations, but temporary conditions that are part of the larger process of our evolution. This perspective allows us to handle difficulties with grace, knowing that even in hardship we are being shaped and prepared for something greater. The struggles we face now may serve as stepping stones to deeper wisdom and understanding that will serve us for the rest of our lives and beyond. The eternal perspective also offers a profound sense of peace. When we view our desires and experiences from the standpoint of eternity, we no longer need to rush, compete, or force things to happen. We come to realize that life unfolds in its own time, and that all we need to do is align ourselves with the natural flow of the universe. This peace comes from understanding that everything is unfolding as it should, and that our desires are part of a larger, divine plan that we may not fully understand, but can trust nonetheless. This sense of timelessness also frees us from the fear of failure or loss. If our desires are truly aligned with an eternal purpose, they are not bound by the limitations of time, space, or material outcomes. Failure, in this context, is seen not as a permanent state, but as a temporary detour that teaches us valuable lessons, helping us grow and evolve. There is no rush to achieve or to prove ourselves, because from an eternal standpoint, our worth is not measured by the successes or failures of this lifetime alone, but by our capacity for love, growth, and contribution to the greater whole. Living with an eternal perspective means that we begin to see ourselves as part of a much larger story, one that is not limited to the span of our lives, but is woven into the fabric of a vast, infinite existence. Our desires are no longer about personal satisfaction, but about our place in the larger cosmic flow. We begin to ask ourselves not just what we want in this moment, but what we are called to contribute to the world and to others, knowing that our actions will reverberate far beyond our immediate lives. This perspective also allows us to see beyond the surface of things. We start to recognize that the true value of our desires lies not in the material or external rewards they bring, but in the internal growth and transformation they inspire. We begin to value qualities like wisdom, compassion, and inner peace over temporary achievements or possessions. Our desires become focused not on acquiring more, but on becoming more and more aligned with our true purpose, more connected to others, and more in tune with the eternal flow of life itself. By adopting an eternal perspective, we also learn to embrace impermanence. Life is fluid, constantly changing, and we come to accept that nothing lasts forever. Our desires, our relationships, and even our struggles are transient, flowing through our lives like seasons. This understanding enables us to appreciate the present moment without clinging to it or fearing its loss. We learn to live fully in the now, knowing that it is part of a much larger and more meaningful journey. The awareness of the impermanent nature of life deepens our appreciation for each moment, each interaction, and each desire, as we recognize that they are all part of the eternal unfolding of existence. In conclusion, desires that align with a higher divine source carry with them a deeper purpose, guiding us toward growth, connection, and fulfillment beyond the self. They invite us to embrace a path of selflessness, surrender, and compassion, while offering the courage to let go and trust the unfolding of life. These desires are not bound by time, ego, or external validation, but flow naturally from a place of peace and alignment with higher values. When we approach our desires with an eternal perspective, we gain the wisdom to see beyond immediate gratification, allowing us to live with greater meaning, peace, and a profound sense of connection to all.